All right, so anyway, I'm Valerie from Valerie Wallace Fine Arts here in my basement studio in Orono, Maine, 04473. And tonight we're going to do a picture of a skater on a frozen lake with a full moon. And this picture is a combination of just the landscape, and then I found this skater on just somebody else's picture last year one time when I was looking for skaters, and I saved it and I just plopped it on there. And it's pretty straightforward. My plan is to basically probably paint it twice. We'll go through everything just kind of quickly and lightly, and then we'll go through again and we'll, work out anything we need to and like get a second coat on things that you need to. All right. One of the things with this one is that we're going to use black, and I don't usually paint with black until the very end of the painting because it tends to get that black pigment gets into your water, which gets into all of your colors and makes them kind of dull. But since if this is at night and this is kind of most of the colors are a little dull, it's not such a big deal so far. Okay. I got a lot of blue, and I just have two little bits of white. In this, we almost always need tons of white. And in this one, you're just really going to put some white maybe on your moon, on your reflection, whatever kind of sparkles you want in your lake, maybe a little bit to highlight the person, and then maybe some stars. So you really don't need hardly any, okay? I have this blue. It's kind of a middle blue. If you have phthalo blue, you may want a tiny bit of white in that. This one I think is cerulean. Okay, it looks like this. Oh, and then black. I got my black, but it's drippy, so I'm not going to put it on there just yet because that runs all over the place. Oh, and then I need a little smidgen of brown. It's kind of a reddish brown. If you have the umber, the dark brown, or another brown, it's fine. But we're just going to use that to kind of plan out the girl or whoever. And I'm going to have a little bit of red. I'm going to dress her in something red. So whatever your color. Send the email. If you like purple, make it purple. If you want it green, you want it all black and white, whatever, that's great. Okay, let's go. I'm going to start out with my brush that's kind of big like this. And we're going to start out with the lake. All right. And if you have paint that comes in a tube like I did, you're going to want some water. So make sure you have plenty of water. You want to thin it out. And same thing for you with the watercolor. I'll do that too, I guess. All right. I'm going to start with that horizon line, which, from top to bottom is about a third, maybe. Somewhere right around there. Don't be skimpy on the lake because you are going to have this figure on there and you want some room. So I'm going to go about here. All right. And don't go too quick because we want to save. This is especially important if you're doing the watercolors. We want to save some of this area for our reflection. Okay. And it seems complicated. But what I would sort of think about is, in this case, it's a little bit of a rectangle, right? You see that? And then there's a little skinnier point, and then it kind of fades away down here. So what I'm going to do is mark a little bit like on the side here, and maybe the side here, kind of like that. And then I'm going to mark a little bit skinnier area, a little side to side like this. Okay, maybe connect right here. If anything, make it bigger than what you want, because you can always make it smaller. And if we have acrylics, you can always paint over it and make it bigger too. But if you're doing something watery, you might not do it. And then it just gets real skinny coming down here like this. So I'm just going to leave a little space like that. My blue is incredibly bright. And this one is just a hint gray. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of brown, not too much, just a little bit on the top of my brush like this. And I'm going to mix that into this blue. Start a little bit. You can always add more, but I think you'll be able to see right away that it's just gonna take the edge off of that a little bit. Okay, so take a little water, as much as you can, work side to side. And we're just gonna fill in this bottom part here. All right. Talking and thinking, and then I forget to look, but we've been trying to troubleshoot the problem. Making several calls to Spectrum, which are always super fun. Actually, everybody was nice, but I mean, it always just reminds me how confused I am about internet stuff, but this will be good too, because we'll put the moon above your reflection, which I think sometimes when we put the moon on first and then the reflection, sometimes they don't line up. And that way, I think this will make it actually more likely to line up. All right, watercolor going here too. Oh, that's dark. Just gonna water that down a little bit, okay. Ooh, very dark. Dark and drippy. But why not? All right, let's see. I'll bring that in a little bit. Here. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put blue on the sky. And all you really have to be considering is, it's probably going to be the same. So I'm going to use the same shade of blue, or, if you're using purple, is that, we can make it a little darker. That's sort of my plan, to go a little darker at the top, because that's going to make it so the stars show. But you see it's lighter here, right? And the reason why we want it lighter is because of the black trees. And if you get them too close, if you don't get your blue light enough, then your trees aren't going to show up. And there's really not too many things going on in this picture. So you do want that. But it's also something you can adjust if you have to. All right, so I'm going to use the same color. I think, oh, wait a minute. Oh, before we do anything, we're going to put a moon on there. If you're really careful and you want to take a quarter and trace it, I would still just use your paint, not necessarily draw on there. Okay, so I want my moon to be in the middle. You can put it, if you put it really low, you have to adjust your trees. You can put it high, I don't know, wherever you want it. But I'm going to try to put it in the middle of my thing. Okay. Big, little, start big. That way, if you make it lopsided, you can redo it. And also, if you put it in the wrong place, just paint over it and put it in a different place. No one will ever know. And you might not like it. You might want it in a different place. It's fine. All right, and start low with because you're going to paint this other stuff, and that way it'll give it time to dry. All right, I think I'm doing this right. All right, yeah, a little bit of brown in my blue. I'm using some water. The thicker the paint, the more pigment, rather than water, the faster it's going to dry, which we kind of want. Although if you're anywhere, well, maybe not Amy, because in the coastal area, but if here where it's super dry, I'm gonna have trouble having things dry anyway. So acrylic dries fast. Even the watercolors would dry fast with all the heat on and everything. I'll get a very big brush like that. I should have started with that. Let's see. I'll make this one a little lower, a little smaller. Ooh. Ooh. So with a watercolor, you're probably not as likely to do a second coat. So you may want to add a little extra, something a darker blue up towards the top. I guess if you get your blue is too light, it's going to look like a sun in the daytime. So that's the one thing. You got to get your blue dark enough that it looks like it's nighttime. Well, I mean, I guess you don't have to, but that's what you might get a different feeling of things if you are a little bit. So all we're going to do here is from that part down, it's solid black. Okay. It's just the upper part where you see these little peaks of tree. Okay. Keep that in mind. That's kind of important. No one's drawing. I guess the thing I was going to say, if you're drawing, don't go too heavy because we're going to put the person on top and we don't want it too clogged up with pigment. The only real thing you're up against is how big do you make your trees? If we made the trees like really tiny, she's going to look a lot closer and the trees in the lake is going to seem really big and the other side of the lake is going to be really far away. The tree's going to be really far away. These trees don't actually seem too far away at all, right? So if you make them bigger, it's just a more intimate lake situation. Maybe I'll make these small and I'll make these big. Okay, so get your black. Since we've already painted on here, it won't dry quite as quickly. We are going to have this figure on here. I would start on this side, give it as much and smooth things out as much as you can so that it's drying here, just in case you wind up with putting the head on top of this part. You know, you could fit it here instead. Okay, makes sense? You want to dry this as quickly as you can. I'm going to use a little bit smaller brush. I've got one like this size instead. And I'm going to paint along my horizon line with a black line. And I mean, this one has two trees down kind of low. Maybe here, maybe here. Another one, maybe a little bit taller, maybe a little spaced apart. And then, you know, one that comes up here. Otherwise, I think if you don't bring them up too high, you're going to have to do something fun and exciting in your sky, or it's going to be a lot of sky, or depending where your moon is. Okay, so keep that, because you don't want nothing. If your moon is lower, you don't want just a lot of sky with nothing interesting. You'll have to paint something up there, I guess. Maybe like here, maybe like here. Okay, so I know that, you know, probably right around here, this whole thing is just going to be filled in black. It's just I'm thinking about the top parts. And these are just kind of blurry little triangles. So, you know, you could just kind of feather it into like a little triangle like that. That's an easy way to do the top. Okay. You could, sometimes what I do is go, I find about how wide I want to be here and here, and I'll just make little diagonal lines down one side and then little diagonal lines down the other side. Again, filling it in, but I don't want to get too wide, but something like that. That works. Or you can also just go side to side, but you start kind of small and then you work them wider as you go down. All right. I'm trying to think of another way. The thing that you want, I think, at the end, a lot of times people will wind up with them kind of fat like this, is that at the end, just give yourself a little tiny peak at the top again, maybe even with a little weenie fork kind of shape. And that little bit there, that little piece at the top always kind of looks nice. All right. I'm just going to go back and forth too. I guess that's another way. Kind of herringbone. All right. And then just fill in the rest of this all solid. You know, I might want my black, you know, I don't necessarily want it to look like a line. So I might work that up into the shape a little bit. And in between, I might paint it, you know, up and down a little bit, so it has kind of a little rough edge to it. Spread this one out a little bit. It's all good. I mean, they could be different trees too, so you could have different shapes to them. This one kind of goes at an angle too, so maybe I'll bring that up that way a little bit. A little less in here. Yeah. All right, and I want, like I said, I want to smooth this side out, so that's getting a jump on the drying. Yeah. Maybe, like I said, I might make these just a little smaller so you can kind of see what happens when how it looks farther away. Well, movie's probably drawing. Right? And if I make them look really small over on this side, it's going to look like the lake is not straight across, that it's. But I guess if you're doing them smaller as far as in height, then you have to kind of think of the tree as being a lot smaller too. Like you can't make it quite as thick. So if something seems funny, which, you know, sometimes you don't, you might not know what it is that seems funny about your picture, but you're like, something's not right about that. It's usually something to do with proportions. So you have to look at it and be like, you know, are those the right size for what I'm trying to do here? And it's usually something about that. All right, here too, I gotta dry that out a little bit. Okay, all right. Okay, so the next, I think we're ready. We're gonna come back to the background again. Okay, so don't worry about that right now. We're gonna do the figure. And my plan with the figures, we'll kind of do it, but we won't do it totally finished. Then we'll touch up a little bit with the sky and the water a little bit, and we'll come back and we'll do a little bit more on the person, but we'll give her a little chance to dry. If you're using acrylic paint, don't forget that if you paint on there, I don't know if I have a cloth handy, but you know, if I take the paint and I put it on here like this, and then I'm like, so say you draw the girl and you don't like her, take a clean cloth and you can just wipe that right off. Okay. It's pretty forgiving because it's plastic. All right. So just keep that in mind. Can't do that so much with the watercolors, but so what I'm going to do is take a smaller brush, and we're going to start by kind of making a stick figure. Your person has long arms. Your person has long legs. Your person has a small head. And then we kind of flesh out the thickness of the body a little bit, okay? One of the other things I've noticed lately is that when you do a figure, that if you happen to make one arm a little longer than the other one, or one leg a little longer than the other one, it takes the body from being like straight on like this to like being to moving forward, like, you know, the leg that's longer is the one that's stepping towards you. If one of her arms is longer, then it's going to be coming towards us, where the other one, if it's a little shorter, it's going to, even if they both are drawn out to the side, if one looks long and the other one looks short, it's going to look like it's coming towards you. So something to make a body look a little more natural is don't make all the parts super symmetrical. Okay, they are, but don't make them that way. So with her, the thing that's happening is that she's basically one line like this. If you tilt it a little bit, the great thing about skating is that you're off balance, so that if you have her a little off balance looking, it's only going to kind of be more, I don't know, like it might be really, really nice for your picture. And if you make the head a little big, you can turn it into a hat, okay? And also we'll bulk up her a little bit on the sweater and stuff because, you know, she's got some warm clothes on. So what I'm going to do is start with I'm just gonna add a little bit of white to my brown here, okay? Ooh. If the blue gets in it, that's fine because it just makes it a little bright. But this, I want it to be relatively dark because it's going to wind up being the skin tone of her face. All right. And because she's in the dark and away from the light, I want it to be pretty dark. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start with a person. Don't get too low on your picture because you may find you have to add on legs. And if you have to add on legs, you don't want the skates coming off the page. So if anything, start a little higher. You know, I mean, I could start her up here, but she'd probably be pretty tall. So I'm going to start her about here. I don't want to get too close to the edge. So I'm going to move her over towards the middle a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to have a line that kind of comes down like this. All right. We will take our, actually, let's do the arms first. So you're going to leave a little bit at the top. That's going to be where the head is. And she has one arm that kind of swoops down and one arm that's kind of going out, right? If it goes into my reflection, that's fine. Okay. I mean, in reality, and the thing about a woman, especially going sideways, if you're doing a woman, is that her shoulders are probably relatively narrow. And especially if you go from being like this way versus this way, sideways, you know, it gets pretty small. So we don't have to think too much about the shoulder area right in there, but that's kind of where it goes. Okay. Then we're going to take this middle part of her body and you're going to make that kind of a square rectangle right in the middle there. Right now, after we put the parts on there, just real basic stick figure, we'll check the proportions and see if they're on target. Okay. So this one, I'm going to let that be her leg. I'm going to bring that right down like this. And then she's having the other one. I mean, I think she kind of has it bent, her knee bent a little bit, but you know, it's nice. So you can, but if you want her to be a little more, what is that, graceful, then start right here at the hip and just bring that line out straight like that. Okay. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to connect, depending on how short I want her skirt to be. You know, I can connect that little spot up here, or I can connect it down here. I mean, she looked a little old-fashioned skirt there with that one. But this leg, it's going to be just, it's going to cling right to that leg and right to that side of the body, but it's over here where it's going to, and maybe it even flares out a little bit. So it goes a little bit longer than the leg. I'll do it again over here in a second. So if you fall behind, just stay where you're at, and then you can catch up. So I'm going to paint it with this color. So if you put her head a little to the left of that line, it's going to make it look like she's leaning forward a little bit. If you put her head a little bit to the right of the line, she's going to have that chin right up and she's going to be very elegant. So it depends on, you know, and maybe it'll just be like whatever happens. You don't have to think too much about her neck. But anyway, I'm going to put I'm just going to add on to that a little kind of circle. Now what I want to do is I want to measure as much as I can. I want to hold my fingers and measure the size of the head. And then I want to make sure the body is at least about 6 heads tall. You don't need a ruler. You just need and it doesn't have to be exact. It's just a rough thing, but you have to be able to hold your fingers steady. So I hold them like this, and that's one side. So I'll go 1, 2. So the torso is about 2 heads, and then the leg should be about 3. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See if that works. Again, her head and her torso here, her sweater, should be about 2 times as big as her head. All right. And then the legs should be at least 3 times as long. 3 times as big. Legs longer than body. You can always make them longer. Okay. Then the other thing is, I know you can't see me, But if you could, you would see that my hands touch my thighs. So if I swung her arm over here to the side of her body, it's going to hit her thigh. If they're super short, what it's going to look like is, what's this thing called, Naruto? When somebody's coming forward and they're doing Naruto, because they're going to be looking like they're going back into distance, or it's just going to look like something's wrong with the person because their arms are too short. All right. Long arms, long legs, shorter body. Like I said, not too big of a head. If the head is big, you just have to add on to all the parts. All right. If I put a skate, what happens with the skate is that it's kind of like an L, only in this case backwards. All right. Is that it's going to be one long continuous line of the leg that goes into the foot, right? And then it's a little triangular like this. You ready? Is how big your feet are. Where is it? Is how big your feet are. I mean, your feet aren't probably as big as mine are, but your feet are huge. And I got a big head and my boots are bigger than my feet. So don't make teeny tiny feet, because if you make teeny tiny feet, it looks like the person's gonna fall over. It's like toddlers. They have little teeny tiny feet, they fall over all the time. But when you get to be about 11, just before you're going to grow, you grow really big feet so that you won't fall over all the time. Okay, so don't be skimpy with her foot, and then that's how I did it. Be able to put the skate on there. Yeah, that's fine. The other thing is that your hand is huge too. All right, so if you have a glove on your hand, it's not going to be a little teeny tiny ball this big. It's going to be as big as her face. And if she's skating like with Grace, the thumb is going to go down a little bit and you're more like a blob with a thumb on the bottom side. If she's going like this doesn't make sense, but it would be the thumb down. That's how it looks elegant. So here I'm going to put that thumb on the bottom and like that. Proportion issue. So I'm going to lean this one maybe a little bit. I don't want to have her head right in the middle of this. That'll be kind of awkward. So I'm going to put it up a little bit higher. So I'm going to give her a little bit of lean on this one. So I'm going to have that nice long line. All right. And then I'm going to put a line over this way. And then one over this way. And then I'm going to take her body and kind of make that into a rectangle, but close to a square. All right. I'm going to take her head and she's going to be looking down a little bit in this one. So I'm going to lean it over towards the left a little bit. All right. And then maybe not quite so. All right, so there's one leg. The other one, I'm not going to put it out quite so far. All right, she's going to have the foot that's going to come this way. It's a little triangle. We'll have the skate on at the end. And this one, I have another little triangle. I'll make her a little skirt, maybe a little shorter on this one. Okay, and a little bit of, I'll extend the arm a little bit with kind of a little blob, and then I'll put a little piece that's down that looks like the thumb going down. Whoop. Like I said, it doesn't have to be tiny because she's got gloves on. The first thing I want to do is get what's going to be a little bit darker. Let me see how I'm doing for time. Okay, so yeah, we don't want to fiddle around with this too long. If you are all set with your sky and you're like, it's all good to go, then skip this part. The other thing is there's a little bit of darker blue that's maybe like right at the base of the trees. I'm just going to take some of my blue, put a little bit of black in there. Not much. And put that a little bit right here. And if I go over my girl, it doesn't really matter because I'm going to paint her with some red clothes on afterwards. but maybe a little bit right here. So this was my blue with a little bit of black. Okay, if you have just a darker blue, like a Prussian blue, you could use that. The other thing, this is important though, is that we want to have her have a little bit of a shadow. So something down here, it doesn't have to be anything, like it doesn't have to be touching her foot because she's gonna have that skate on there. And that one's off the ground. But something that's darker here because it's gonna make it seem like she's actually on the ground. Okay? See that you can even see the difference between how this one looks and how this one looks and how she just looks like she's floating in the air here, but this one she's touching. And then I'm going to put a little bit up here. Oh, that's a lot. Yeah. Okay. And this would be something, you know, if you don't get to it right now, if you're kind of behind, then you can always come and do this in there later. And the only thing that would happen is if you put your stars in, you just have to, like, if you paint, you wouldn't paint around them, you just paint over them and then put them back in there again. If you decide you want to add to your sky, like, you know, later tonight or tomorrow or something like that, if you want to play around with it a little bit. Okay. So that's a little darker. I can put a little more. If I take the blue and I paint in these little pockets between, maybe I'll make it a little lighter so you can see it. If I paint it a little bit lighter in here and I go over the edges of the trees, it's no big deal. All I'll go is take a little black and touch it back up again. I don't need to go carefully around everything because that's way too much work. Okay, so I can just paint over those a little bit and then touch that black up a little bit. Okay, a little. All right. There. Okay. On this one, I just want. So it's kind of heavy. I'll just take a little water and just play around with it. Let that dribble down here a little bit.
Hi, Nate.
Hi, Nady. Okay. So what I'll have you do is I've got a smaller brush about this size, and I think the thing to do is to take some white and make a light shade of blue. All right. All right, just very, you know, quite light. Okay. All right. And I want to reduce some of what's going on here in this reflection. Like, I don't know if I need it all the way down here. So I'm going to put some of this light blue over here. Okay. And it also is kind of cutting in a little bit here. I think the important thing with the reflection is the less you have, the more striking it's going to be. So if you have a pretty big amount of white, you want to make that smaller. A big pool of white here, and then it would trickle down to not much of anything. So I'm going to cover a lot of this bottom with a light blue. I'm going to creep in the sides of this a little bit with some light blue. I want to work side to side. If I hold my brush right perpendicular to my paper, it'll give me a smaller little bit. And if you're painting with acrylics, then you can always go back and forth. If you're doing the watercolors, just don't eat up too much of the white until you're sure you want to. All right, and then I'm going to bring this in a little bit here too. Okay. And then just like I put a second coat on the sky, kind of want a second coat on my water. If you have time for that, if you're way behind, don't sweat it. It's something you can do later. You know, I have a little bit of white, so it's not quite as dark as this. And I can bring that right around. That way too, if you flubbed up anything on your person, you can kind of paint over those edges a little bit. You're just trying to get a little side to side here. The second coat really covers up your brush strokes. And any shade of blue with a little bit of white in there, maybe the brown that you had in there, any shade of that is going to be okay. If it gets a little lighter in some other places, what it looks like is that there's like something on the ice that is catching the light of the moon, and it just looks sparkly. So, and you can see even the way the person did this, that, you know, it's black over here, it's quite dark here, it's pretty light blue in here. There's varying shades of it. The thing is, you just want to kind of work side to side. You can get close to the person, or you don't have to get that close at all. All right. I think that's all right. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of wipe my brush and put a little bit of white on my moon, and I'll have just a little teeny tiny bit of blue left on my brush, so it will make the white just a little bit blue, gray, or whatever. You can always make your, you know, after your paint dries, you can always make your moon smaller if it's too big or if it's lopsided. You can sort that out, okay? Then I'm going to really rinse my brush. All right, nice and clean, so that I can take some white, just straight white. I might pat a little of this on the moon, and then I'm going to put a little bit of it in this highlight here. Okay, side to side, like right in the middle. I don't think I've ever done a highlight on a lake or anything that I actually thought I did very well at it, but I haven't quite mastered it, but it's still whatever. It's not the most important part of the picture to me, so don't worry about it. You know, and if I put a couple of little sparkles like this over on the sides, I think it can look a little bit like, oops, that's a little heavy. I don't know if I like that or not, but. Oh, okay. All right. So the only thing we really have left to do. Also, while you're doing the white, because all we have to do is just kind of like get a second coat on our person. Is that if you want to put your stars in the sky, this is the time to do it. And a lot of times, what I do is I use the wooden end of my brush instead of the brushy end of the brush. So. And stars, unlike snowflakes are all over, but stars are in clusters. I mean, I'm not going to make it look like any real constellations, and they're also sometimes, like in this one, there's a few that are brighter. So you might have something like that, but then you might have very, very tiny little bits like this too. Like I said, I'm using the back end. If you put them on and you don't like them, you can always paint over them and do it again. And this would be, you know, even on the watercolor, if you don't have any white, then you can't really make stars. I don't know how you would watercolor. Well, I guess you could, but I couldn't. Like that, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, there might be even a little low one. Planet. Nothing like a moonlight sky with some stars. There. Okay. If you find that you're struggling with the color on the person, just keep in mind that if you were out at night and a person was being backlit, so they were like a silhouette, it looked black, right? The problem with making this whole girl black is that you're going to lose her head in the black trees. So the next time you're out at night and you see something like that, move your head up and down and you'll be able to see how, you know, what the silhouette is being a silhouette against, whether it's a blue sky or whether it's dark trees, makes it so whether or not you can see it. I'm gonna make this, I need the red. Okay, so I'm gonna use red, just as nice color change. I'm going to leave this as kind of the skin tone. So I've got a little bit of red. I'm going to take actually this brown that I had, this light brown, and I'm going to mix that with some of the red. And that has a little bit of white in it. If I just use white and red, it's going to be bright pink. And I think that might be a little heavy-handed for the, see how she has a little highlight here? I mean, this doesn't exactly make sense, but if you want to catch, I don't know, let me see if that shows. I guess that doesn't show. I need a little more white, so I'm going to put a little more white in there. But the brown kind of makes the red not so super bright. So if I bring a little highlight on here, maybe a little bit, like again, her sweater can get a little thicker. Okay, maybe this arm. Again, like now that you know she's got a coat on or whatever, you can make that a little thicker. Not too thick, but if it's thick, it's just bundled up, like you have to be these days, right? Okay, not too tiny at the armpit. Okay, so you've got her arm out like this. Make sure you get a little thicker right in the armpit, you know, because you don't, it's an awkward look if you're too, and then maybe I'll do the arm over here a little bit too. Okay. So the other thing that's going to catch some light is probably the top of the hat. Okay, and that might be lighter than her actual face. And the more that you cover her head, this oval that you have, the more you cover it with the hat, the more it just looks like she's looking down. So I mean, I think I can kind of demonstrate that. Like, if I start with a hat that's like, can you see that? Yeah, like up like this, just a little kind of like, almost like a headband on that oval. So kind of from 11 o'clock to 5 o'clock, it's going to look like she's got her head right up. But the more that I take that and bring that over, the more I add that on there, the more she's going to start to be looking down. And, you know, the more I take off on this side, like right in the middle of that circle, the more her head's turning and you just have less face to deal with. And I could add, you know, as a hat, I mean, right now it looks like she's wearing a bathing cap, right? So if you want to plump it up a little bit, you know, add a little bit on the front right here, maybe add a little bit on the back, and use the back end here, give her a little pom-pom. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is use, I guess I ran out of brown. Actually, I can show that over here too. I can't, you know, again, if you're really doing watercolors, you have to plan to save your whites. But so here I've got, what is colors? Just add a little brown. That's the easiest way to like dull it up a little bit. You know, and even more than necessarily the black, a little thick. Okay. And then a hat, let me see, maybe Let's see. I think I'll probably mix red and black for the darker part of her body. Okay. So I've got a little blob of red, take a little black, and it'll make it kind of maroon. Okay. And I'm going to put this over here. And what you're looking for is something darker than the blue on the water, the blue on the ice. So if you can't quite get it, just add more black and that'll help you to get sort of that silhouette feel, but it will still have a little, and I'm just going to paint over this. I mean, this doesn't, getting the color on there is really not that big a deal. Like I said, you could make it almost black. It's just that you're just trying to make it a different color so you can see it. And she'd be dark right in the neck. And kind of on the inside of her arm. Maybe here. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to put black on her legs. Or maybe I'll just use this red black. A little bit smaller brush though. I got the little one again. Okay. So I want to keep these legs pretty thin. Actually, that needs to be darker. And maybe black on the skates. And a little black on her middies. Okay. And the thing we want, I think that's it. Are her blades. All right. And I haven't done this yet, but I'm thinking the white will be fine. I've got a little brush. Another thing you could do too is use a pencil, and it'll look a little different, but sometimes it's worth it if you can really make that little. It's depending on how big your skater is. But I'm going to take a little white, maybe with a little bit of blue in there. And if you have a little brush, and for those of you who haven't done this before too, if you have a toothpick, something like that, you could also use that if you want something to do something quite tiny. And then I'll have the paint all over my brush. So I want to wipe that off. And all you have to do is, there's a little tiny line on the front and a little tiny line on the back, and then one that's runs along the bottom like that. And the front might be a little longer and curve up. Which, I mean, in reality, it would be probably black because of the way the moon is behind it, but I'm doing it this way, I guess. So two little lines, one near the front, one near the back, and then you just have that line parallel to the bottom. I'll do it over. I'll do it with black on the watercolor, so then you can kind of decide. If you make like I made these two lines a little bit long, I'm just going to take a little black and cover that up. So they're not too big. Oh, I can't really see all that well either. Just get my weird contacts on. Okay. I do want the blade to hit the shadow. I don't want a light color in between because it won't look like, well, I mean, it would look like she was not touching the ground, which I guess could be true. But You just want that line to run parallel to the bottom of the skate. So whichever way you have it going, just try to keep that in mind. That's what you're trying to do. And they'll look really old-fashioned if the blade is really big. It look like it's a Hans Christian Andersen illustration or something. There. She looks like she's going down. There. Okay. There. That. Now we can go watch the skaters on the Olympics. I think that's it. Is that it? I think so. So I can't wait to see your pictures. I would love it if you would send me a picture of what you're doing. And if you ask me if I have any suggestions or if you have a question about something, I will happily answer you, but I won't make a suggestion unless you ask me. So if you want me to say something, then ask. And otherwise, I just enjoy seeing them. Oh, this person, you can't even see your hat. The next class is going to be, yeah, that's better. And thank you so much for joining. Let me see if I can get my grid up here so I can get a screenshot. All right. So if you want to hold up your picture, we can see. Oh, look at them all. Hey, Amy. Look at them all. All right. I see. We're going to do one more because everybody's ready now. Now that they saw everybody's, they're like, oh, wait a minute, mine looks good too. I'm going to show my picture. All right, ready? Oh, look at those. Okay. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks so much for watching. And that was definitely fun for me. So hopefully it was fun for you.
Great.
And reach out if you have any questions, and I'll hopefully see some of you again at the end of the month. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.